So we are in our last week of working in our Wednesday class, and we're working on the book Discover the Power Within You by Eric Butterworth. And this is what he says about Jesus. It is unfortunate that we have put Jesus on a cloud where we cannot understand him or identify with him. Jesus was a man, one that hath been in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. He made the overcomings along the way of his life, not because he could not sin, but because he would not. He was no ordinary man, but he was a man. He was called Master, not because of the manner of his birth, but because of the victorious overcoming through his life. All along the way, even while teaching and healing, he was engaged in his own work of self-mastery. Self-mastery. I think that's our job, is to work on, to set a goal for, to step clearly every day more fully into self-mastery. But what does that mean? Self-mastery. I end most of our prayers with, in the name of and in the nature of Jesus the Christ, our brother and our way shower. Because I do want us, like Eric Butterworth says, identify with Jesus as somebody who is not apart from us, who was so much above us that we could not do what Jesus did, and be in our humanity like he was in his. So if we follow Jesus as a brother, as someone that we look up to, and he himself said, "These things you will also do, and greater things you will do. Follow me." I'm cutting the path. I'm showing you how. I am the mentor. I am the teacher. Learn from me. And Eric Butterworth says that we went from that message into let's just worship him because he was so good. And we can't aspire to that. And Jesus is saying just the opposite of that. And Eric Butterworth is saying this is about self-mastery, that he was always engaged in mastery for himself. Not over what was happening in the world, even though I believe that once we master ourselves, the world becomes more manageable. The things that we deal with become less big. We see them differently. So self-mastery. We're going to do a series through Lent on self-mastery. How to step into it. What are some of the facets of it? How can we look at it from our lives? And sometimes we think, our small lives, but there is no small in the universe. We are not small beings. Just like Jesus was not a small being. And I think part of this journey to self-mastery is first about embracing the fact that you are not small and inconsequential. And that right here, within me, I have the power to be masterful. I am masterful. It says in Genesis that when man was created, he was given dominion and power over all of the earth, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea. And yes, maybe that can be taken literally, but if we take it figuratively, then it means that there's nothing in this universe that we can't conquer through our consciousness. And knowing that and taking a hold of it such that it becomes part of our DNA and how we live is different. That I am the master of my universe. All of this in here, what I think, say, do, how I express myself, how I move through the world, that I am masterful. If you got up in the morning and said, I am masterful, what would you think about your day? What would become less important? How would your priorities shift? How would you look at each task? How would you look at your relationships? And that you know that you have this dominion, that there's nothing that's too big for you. Linda and I were talking about grief for a bit earlier. And that always seemed insurmountable. And even that is something we can have dominion over, but I think it feels and it ends up being different than what we expect. I think, like with most things, that when we're masterful, especially over something like grief, that you put it away. That you overpower it. That you say, okay, I've got this, it's done. But I think being masterful in grief can also mean that you feel it fully and embrace it and stay in it when it's here and honor it and honor yourself through a path. Be a master of your emotion when you're in it and know that it is merely emotion and not some force that can take you out of here. That can lay you on the floor, put you in a fetal position, never able to get up again. Because man doesn't feel like that a lot. And yes, there may be times, like with other things in life, where we end up in the fetal position fully. But that doesn't mean you're not masterful. You can be masterful in those moments and being there fully, seeing it fully, feeling it fully, and still saying, this is mine to do right now. I think that here and now is very much a part of being masterful. That you are focused on what is the job to do right here, in this place. That we don't run from what's before us. Because where is there to run to? And if not you, who? If we're given something to do, and that may include something to feel, let's be in it. And I think mastery is the time that we say, yes, I will be in this fully. Not shying away. Just like the lyrics of the song said, to surrender your rebel heart fully, I think is mastery. And if you're like me, I thought surrender was a 4-letter word and to be avoided at all cost. I probably have said out loud, I will never surrender. And what I've learned over time is that it matters what you surrender to. And I think self-mastery is surrendering to the best within you, to the divine within you, to this indwelling Christ, the Christ potential within us, and then surrendering fully to it and say, yes, I will be in this now. And not having to worry about surrendering to it and being in it an hour from now, or a day from now, or in the next problem, or in the next crisis, or in the next situation, or the next time we face that person in our job or in our family that drives us mad. Because only the here and now matters. And I think masters are present. Just present. And once you're present, then you have the ability to bring all the forces that you have within you to that particular moment. So Jesus was always engaged in self-mastery. If you read Scripture, you know how he responded to situations rather than reacted. That something would come up, somebody would pose a question. They talk about him being tempted in the desert. And there's always this thoughtful response. And a lot of times it was a question. So I think self-mastery is also about restraint. Knowing when to speak and when not to speak. And when you do speak, knowing what to speak. And the what that we speak comes from, again, the divinity and the master within you. I've said before that times when I've been most masterful is when I knew not to speak at all, but to just be there. And you let who you are and your beingness speak for you. So having some restraint, being present. Mastery, we think of it as something that we have to inflict on other people. I think we've given it a negative connotation. But the only thing we're really in control of is ourselves. It doesn't matter what happens out in the world. We only get to control it by what we think of it. And what we want our consciousness to say about it and process about it. And it often changes the game once we lift our consciousness about something. So masters are always connected. And if you have self-mastery, you know fully and clearly what you are connected to. Jesus knew that he was one with the Father. And so everything he did, everything he said came from that. He never had to wonder, how do I take care of this? He didn't waffle. He just always looked up, went into higher consciousness, got the answer, and responded accordingly. So if you you don't know what you're a master of and what you're connected to, then you become a slave to something else. And that's what runs you and runs your life. And I think that's why we feel so out of control, because there's something else pulling the strings other than us, other than the master within. How many times do we go through our day feeling like something else is jerking us around? From one instance to another, one appointment to another, one engagement with someone else to another. People just coming at you all the time. Information coming at you all the time. Everything feels like noise. And yes, there are days too when I just want to go like this. And you just want to have a tantrum. You want to go, no, 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 and you just want to shut it all out. And that's when I know I have lost that feeling of self-mastery. Somehow I got off the path. I lost my groundedness, my connectedness. I forgot who I am. I lost control of the self-mastery. My knowledge of it, my feeling of it, because there are days when I feel it. Most days, most times, I feel it. In this book, Discover the Power Within You, in this discussion of self-mastery, Eric Butterworth brings up some masters, and one of them is Leonardo da Vinci. And Leonardo da Vinci says that it looks simple, but it was all about practice, practice, practice. Masters, practice. Everything is an opportunity to practice your self-mastery, your power. Every instance. When you wake up, the first thing you think, an opportunity to practice self-mastery. You hear something on the news, and you feel yourself starting, the blood pressure starting to rise. Opportunity to practice self-mastery. Am I going to let whatever I just heard flip me into some kind of emotion that feels chaotic? Or do I hear it, take from it what I want, and let it go? You get in the car and you pull out of the parking lot and somebody cuts you off. Opportunity to practice self-mastery. Did I just get cut off because he hates me? Am I going to spiral out of control and now I'm going to be pissed for the next 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days because somebody had the nerve to cut me off? Or do you just say, oops, nobody got hurt, thank goodness, and keep driving? Send blessings to the person. Yes. And bless all those that this person may come into contact with. And hope that no one gets hurt. They all get home safely. Self-mastery. Masters are always practicing. Nothing is outside of the practice. Because it's all a part of the path that we're on. Self-mastery, I think we have to invite it in and say, I'm willing. And then start your practice. Every minute, every hour, every day. Sound like a tall order? Sure. But don't masters stand tall? They stand tall. And it has nothing to do with whether or not they're over 6 feet in height. Masters have a bearing to them, a physical bearing. When I was at Cirque du Soleil, one of the things I noticed was how the people who were performing, how they walked around the stage. All of their chests were high. And their arms were often out like this. They had carriage, their chins were high. They just had, they had that look. Like they owned the stage that they walked on. And don't masters feel like that when you see them? When you know somebody is a master, don't they walk in like they own the room? And not in a heady, conceited kind of way, arrogant kind of way, but in a this is mine kind of way. This is mine. This is my universe. I've got this. Engaged in self-mastery. I remember I was always a people watcher, and I had mentors who never knew they were mentoring me because I watched them all the time. And I could watch somebody walk in a room, and I could look at them and say, that's what I want. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put a name to it. I wasn't sure what it was all about in the beginning, but I knew I wanted that kind of carriage when I walked into a room. And I would think, what is that? And I think that is engagement in self-mastery. Knowing who you are. Being comfortable in your own skin. Owning it, embracing it. Being unapologetic about it. So when we're in prayer and we're talking again, and I say those words in the name and in the nature of Jesus the Christ, it's not just about Jesus. It's just that I'm asking you to invoke that prayer, that affirmation in that same strength and power, that same divinity that Jesus walked with. Knew in his heart was his. So that we can be an example like him to others, to ourselves. So that when we look in the mirror, we can say, I know you as a master. And you can say it with your chest high and your chin up, looking straight in the eye. I am masterful. So in the season of Lent, as we get to Easter, we're going to work and talk and delve more deeply into self-mastery. What does it mean for us? How do we live it? How do we embrace it? And like Jesus, how do we walk this earth as masters?